Months ago, Georgia passed a life-changing law legalizing a form of medical marijuana. More than a dozen people who were forced to leave their homes here in Georgia are now back after they were only receiving treatment in another state. A little girl among them is named Victoria. Chris Hopper spoke with Victoria's family, spent a lot of time with them. And Chris, she's actually one of the first to receive this cannabis oil here, so her life has changed dramatically, I understand.
Yeah, and it's amazing to hear him talk about the change. Corey Lowe says life is indescribably better. Her daughter has what she needs, and most important, it's legal.
Here, let's put this on.
Corey Lowe
Here, stand up.
is the kind of mother who will do anything to help her children.
Tried everything they've offered.
She did everything to help
You think she's good till the bus gets here?
her daughter Victoria.
The doctor said it's seizures for infants.
She gave Victoria every medicine she could get her hands on,
They couldn't get her seizures to stop.
but it didn't work.
She would have 50 a day, 50 to 100 a day before cannabis oil.
What was that like?
Oh, it's gut-wrenching.
That's when Corey and Victoria packed up and took off to Colorado, leaving behind the rest of her family.
I missed their first day of school, and I missed my son's birthday, and our anniversary, my husband's birthday.
In Colorado, she saw cannabis oil work. When she got back home, she fought for it in Georgia. In April, Georgia passed a bill legalizing medical marijuana. Victoria is one of the first to have a temporary permit.
It's been a huge relief. It has been.
Victoria now has seizureless days.
All done.
Days Corey fought for and continues to fight for.
To have people reach out to me and say, thank you, I've gotten my life back, and I've never even met them, you know, it makes it all worth it.
She says now with her daughter's life and Georgia's future on the right track,
Good morning.
she's motivated to continue that fight for the next kid who needs medical marijuana. And it is still illegal to buy and grow medical marijuana in Georgia, and that's what Lowe says she's fighting for next year.
And it's wonderful to see that the family's back together because the little girl, Victoria, and her mother had to separate from the rest of the family.
She talked about it, missed birthdays, anniversaries, all of that.
Yeah, so now they're back together and doing a lot
much
better.
better.
Yeah. All right, Chris. Thank you.
Now, a person gunned down at a Decatur apartment complex. Police have been on the scene all night. Chris Hopper is live. Chris, I know you spoke with some investigators. What'd you find out?
Well, Vinny, we know that man was found shot to death in the driver's seat of his white SUV. That's where DeKalb County Police found him this morning. If you look right back there, you'll see a parked car, that one with the damage in the front. They say that victim, after he was shot, actually drove a short distance and then crashed into that parked car. All of this happening here on Line Circle in Decatur in DeKalb County. We know that that victim is somewhere between 20 to 25 years old, a black male found in the driver's seat of that white SUV. Investigators spent the overnight here trying to piece this together, trying to figure out exactly what happened. We know this all happened shortly after midnight.
After he was shot, he was able to drive his vehicle a short distance before striking another car. His vehicle came to rest, and that is where DeKalb Police found that individual.
Now, we know at this point, police are still looking for any suspects. They're also trying to talk to witnesses, find a witness who may have seen something this morning to try, as I mentioned, to piece this together, figure out exactly what happened, but there are no suspects at this point. Of course, we'll continue to update you as this investigation continues throughout the morning. Vinny.
All right, thanks so much, Chris. And right now, it's believed to be behind a spike in murders across the country, including right here in Atlanta. New this morning, Chris Hopper is live, taking a closer look at the numbers. And Chris, really some surprising trends in Atlanta and across the nation.
Yeah, really disturbing numbers, Vinny, when it comes to violent crime. We're seeing that uptick across the country in some major American cities, including right here in Atlanta. If you take a look at the Wall Street Journal numbers that came out, you'll see murders are up 32% in Atlanta at last check in mid-May. And we're talking about an increase in all kinds of crime. Murder, the big one, of course, other violent crimes, even nonviolent crime up across the country. And as you mentioned, some are calling it the Ferguson effect as tensions continue to increase between police and citizens in the wake of what happened in places like Ferguson and Baltimore. And we've seen decades of crime reduction, but it looks as if A reversal is coming based on these numbers. Killings, robberies, rapes, and assaults are rising in half of the 10 biggest U.S. cities. And it's difficult to figure out why it's happening. Crime is certainly complex, but looking at these numbers here from the Wall Street Journal, you'll see homicides are up 180% in Milwaukee. Chicago has seen a 17% increase in murders. Los Angeles spiked by 25%. And New York, sort of the poster child for crime reduction, has seen murder rise 13%. Now, the Ferguson effect is just one theory that people are talking about today. It's a strong theory if you take a look at some of these numbers, and I'm going to break that down for you coming up at 6 o'clock. We'll give you a couple of big reasons why this Ferguson effect makes sense, Vinny.
All right, Chris Hopper reporting. Thanks so much, Chris. Got to show you this house. This is not somewhere, out in the outskirts. This is in downtown Atlanta. There's a house behind all these overgrown weeds. That's where Chris Hopper is this morning. Last time we spoke, it was a little bit dark. The light is out, and I can see those weeds are taller than you are. Does anyone live in the house?
No, Vinny, it's been abandoned for a long time. And take a look at this weed right here. I'm 6 foot tall. It's well over my head. And if we widen out here, you'll see the entire yard is like this, covering this house. It's like the movie Jumanji, if you saw that when I was a kid long ago. But the problem is people here in this neighborhood aren't laughing about this. They're upset, and they're looking at the city for answers.
Along this West Atlanta street is a tangled mess of weeds, bushes, and trees. Wild nature, typically only seen in a deep forest. But this monstrosity sits amongst a neighborhood of homes.
I tried to cut it down when I cut my grass, but it got so high on me, I can't do nothing to it now.
With the weeds towering over her head, Linda Burton will tell you all about it.
What do you worry about most living next to something like this?
Snakes. And my dog might get bit by one. I might get bit by one.
She'll tell you amongst all the green sits a home that by her estimation has been vacant for more than a decade.
Really, I really wish they would come and tear the house down because it really just looked bad for the community.
By they, she means the city of Atlanta. Officials, neighbors like Burton say, are unwilling to help rid their street of blight.
So they really don't care nothing about us. They'll forget about us.
It may be hard to believe, but this isn't the only house on this street overcome by Mother Nature. There's another just a few doors down, which begs the question, why isn't the city taking care of properties like this?
The problem exists, and Georgia is a property rights state. So even with our existing efforts under code enforcement, there may be some properties that it takes time to contact the owner.
No matter the answer, Burton says it's time for officials to take action before weeds take over more of her street.
And the city told me they're aggressively fighting things like this, trying to clean up neighborhoods, but there's a lot of steps they have to take to make it happen first. Problem is, this home right here behind me, code enforcement didn't even know about until we told them.
All right, looks like we lost Chris there. He didn't get lost in the weeds, though. That's the good news. But wow, could you imagine that in your neighborhood?